Hannah Miller walked into the coffee shop looking like someone who'd given up, and that was exactly the point. She'd dressed to repel, no makeup, hair in a careless knot, jeans that had seen better years. If this blind date took one look and ran, perfect. She was done being fooled by charm, done rebuilding from ashes. But across the room, Ryan Cole saw something else entirely. A woman who didn't perform, who didn't pretend. A single father who'd spent years dodging gold diggers and social climbers. He felt something shift in his chest. She looked real, and that terrified him more than any boardroom ever had. If you're watching, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and yesterday's pastries, which somehow made Hannah feel better about the whole situation. At least the venue matched her expectations. Low, forgettable, easy to leave. She'd chosen a table near the back exit. Strategic positioning. Her sister Emma had set this up. Just coffee, Han, nothing serious. And Hannah had agreed only because saying no required more energy than showing up and tanking it on purpose. So here she sat, wearing her oldest jeans, a sweater 2 sizes too big that hid everything resembling a figure, and absolutely zero effort on her face. If this guy had any sense, he'd take one look and make an excuse about a forgotten appointment. The bell above the door chimed. Hannah didn't look up. She traced the rim of her untouched coffee cup, practicing her exit lines. "Sorry, this isn't going to work. You seem nice, but I'm not in a place for this. Good luck with everything." "Hannah?" The voice was quiet, almost hesitant. She glanced up, prepared to deliver her rehearsed disappointment, and found herself looking at a man who seemed just as uncomfortable as she felt. Ryan Cole stood beside her table with the awkward posture of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He wore dark jeans and a plain gray Henley, no designer labels visible, no watch screaming wealth. His dark hair was slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to schedule a haircut, and his eyes, warm brown, tired around the edges, held the kind of wariness that came from experience, not arrogance. "That's me," Hannah said, not standing. "You must be Ryan." "I am." He gestured to the chair across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She shrugged. "It's a free country." Not exactly welcoming, but he sat anyway, setting down his own coffee. Black, she noticed, nothing fancy, and folding his hands on the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. This was the part where most men launched into their resume. Job, accomplishments, car, hobbies designed to impress. Hannah waited for it, already composing her polite escape. "So," Ryan said finally, "how bad did Emma twist your arm to make this happen?" Hannah blinked. "What?" "Your sister." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "I'm guessing she didn't take no for an answer. My brother practically staged an intervention to get me here." Despite herself, Hannah felt her shoulders relax a fraction. "She threatened to show up at my classroom and make a scene in front of my students." "Ah, the nuclear option." Ryan's smile widened slightly. "My brother went with emotional blackmail, told me I was setting a bad example for my daughter by hiding from life." "You have a daughter?" "I do. Mia. She's 7. Something shifted in his expression, softening it. "She's the reason I'm here, actually. Not directly, but she asked me the other day why I never go on dates like her friend's dad does. And I didn't have a good answer that wasn't basically because people are exhausting." Hannah surprised herself by laughing. "That's honest." Seemed easier than explaining that most first dates feel like job interviews where both people are lying on their resumes. Ryan took a sip of his coffee, grimaced slightly. "This is terrible, by the way." "I know. I picked it on purpose." "To test me?" "To make leaving easier." The honesty hung between them, too raw for a first meeting. Hannah expected him to retreat, to smooth it over with some polite fiction. Instead, Ryan nodded slowly. "That's fair," he said. "For what it's worth, I picked the worst possible shirt this morning for the same reason." "That's not a bad shirt." "It has a stain on the shoulder, coffee, from 3 days ago. I just wore it inside out." Hannah looked closer and realized he was right. There was a faint discoloration near the seam. She found herself smiling despite her best efforts. "We're both disasters." Absolutely. Ryan leaned back in his chair, and some of the tension left his posture. Want to start over? Pretend we're two normal people having coffee instead of two people trying to sabotage their siblings' matchmaking? I don't know if I remember how to be normal. Me neither. But we could try being honest instead. See where that goes. Hannah studied him for a long moment. There was no performance in his manner, no smooth charm or calculated interest. Just a tired single father who looked like he'd forgotten how to do this, same as her. Okay, she said. Honest. I'm an elementary school teacher, 3rd grade. I spend my days with 8-year-olds, which means I have the patience of a saint and the ability to survive on 4 hours of sleep and lukewarm coffee. Impressive. Ryan's expression suggested he meant it. I work in management, corporate stuff. It's boring mostly. The interesting part of my life is Mia. Everything else is just what I do to make sure she's taken care of. How long have you been on your own with her? 5 years. Her mother passed when she was 2. The simple statement carried weight that didn't need elaboration. Hannah recognized that tone, the voice of someone who'd survived something that should have broken them. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. Thank you. Ryan traced the edge of his coffee cup, an unconscious echo of her earlier gesture. It's been long enough that we've found our rhythm, but it's also been long enough that I forgot how to do this. Adult conversation that isn't about parent-teacher conferences or grocery lists. I get that. Different reason, but same result. Hannah surprised herself by continuing. I was engaged 2 years ago. Called it off 6 months before the wedding when I found out he'd been using my name to open credit cards. Spent the last 2 years paying off debt I didn't create and remembering how to trust my own judgment. She hadn't meant to say all that. Definitely hadn't planned to lead with her greatest hit of humiliation. But something about Ryan's quiet presence made the truth feel less dangerous than usual. That's terrible, Ryan said, and his anger on her behalf was evident. Did you press charges? Tried. He was smart about it. Technically, we had shared accounts, shared addresses. Lawyers said it would be nearly impossible to prove I didn't authorize it. Hannah shook her head. So I just paid it. Took on extra tutoring jobs, sold everything that wasn't nailed down, moved into the cheapest apartment I could find. I'm almost done. Another 6 months and I'll be clear. That takes incredible strength. It takes stubbornness. And a really good relationship with instant ramen. Ryan smiled, but his eyes were serious. Strength and stubbornness aren't mutually exclusive. Most strong people I know are just too stubborn to quit. The conversation shifted then, becoming easier. They talked about teaching. Hannah's stories about her students made Ryan laugh, genuine and unguarded. He told her about Mia's current obsession with dinosaurs and her insistence on wearing her Halloween costume to school in January. She's strong-willed, Ryan said, affection clear in his voice. Takes after her mother that way. What was she like? Hannah asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, you don't have to. It's okay. I don't mind talking about Sarah. Ryan's expression was thoughtful, nostalgic, but not pained. She was fierce, brilliant, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately organized it to run better. She would have loved teaching, actually. She had that same patience you described, that ability to see potential in people and pull it out of them. She sounds wonderful. She was, and she would have kicked my ass for hiding from life for 5 years. Ryan smiled sadly. I think that's what my brother was getting at. Not that I need to replace her, you can't replace people, but that she wouldn't want Mia growing up watching me shut down. Hannah understood that. The weight of someone else's expectations, even someone gone. The responsibility of living in a way that honored what they'd given you. My students saved me, she said quietly. After everything fell apart, they were the reason I got out of bed. Hard to wallow when 23 kids need you to teach them fractions and remind them to wash their hands after recess. That's the thing about being responsible for other people, Ryan agreed. It doesn't leave much room for falling apart. Sometimes, I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Both, probably. Most important things are. They ordered second coffees, still terrible, but somehow more tolerable with company. The afternoon stretched into early evening. conversation flowing through safer topics, books, favorite restaurants, the eternal struggle of finding decent coffee in a city full of pretentious cafes. "There's a place in my neighborhood," Hannah said. "Family-owned, been there forever. The coffee is incredible, and they have these pastries. I swear I've tried to recreate the recipe and failed every time." "You bake?" "Stress baking. It's therapeutic, and my neighbors benefit." She smiled. "Though lately I've been too tired even for that. End of school year is brutal. Testing season, parent conferences, kids getting restless." "When's your break?" 3 weeks. And I'm spending it doing absolutely nothing. Maybe sleeping for 48 hours straight." "That sounds perfect." Ryan checked his phone, and something in his expression shifted. Not alarm, but awareness. "I should go. I told my brother I'd pick up Mia by 6, and I'm cutting it close." Hannah felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Right, of course." They stood, that awkward moment of not knowing how to end the interaction. Handshake seemed too formal. Hug, too presumptuous. Ryan solved it by simply saying, "This was nice, really nice. Would you want to do it again? Maybe somewhere with better coffee?" The careful hope in his voice made Hannah's chest tighten. She thought about all the reasons to say no. The debt still hanging over her, the trust she'd spent 2 years rebuilding, the certainty that getting close to someone again would only lead to more wreckage. But she also thought about the way he'd listened when she talked about her students, the pride in his voice when he spoke about his daughter, the absence of performance or pretense in everything he'd said. "Yeah," she heard herself say. "I'd like that." Ryan's smile was worth the risk. "Friday? I know a bookstore that has a cafe attached, decent coffee, and if conversation runs dry, we can browse." Perfect. They exchanged numbers, and Hannah watched him leave, walking with the slightly hurried stride of a parent running late. Through the window, she saw him pull out his phone, presumably texting his brother, and the smile on his face made something warm unfold in her chest. She sat back down, staring at her cold coffee. Emma was going to be insufferable about this. Hannah pulled out her phone and sent a quick text. "Fine. You were right. He's nice. Don't get excited." The response came immediately. "Too late. Already planning the wedding." Hannah rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. Friday came faster than expected. Hannah found herself actually putting effort into her appearance. Not a full transformation, but clean jeans, a sweater that fit properly, and some minimal makeup. She drew the line at heels. If Ryan couldn't handle her in boots, this wasn't going anywhere anyway. The bookstore was perfect. Narrow aisles packed with used books, the smell of old paper and binding glue, and a cafe tucked in the back corner with mismatched chairs and folk music playing softly. Ryan was already there, browsing the fiction section, and he looked up when she approached. "You found it," he said, smiling. "Your directions were good. Also, I may have walked past this place 100 times and never noticed it. It's easy to miss, but they have the best mystery section in the city, and Mia loves the children's corner." He gestured toward the cafe. "Coffee first or browsing?" "Coffee. Definitely coffee." They ordered. Hannah got a latte that actually tasted like coffee instead of burned despair, and claimed a small table near the window. The conversation picked up where they'd left off, easy and unforced. Hannah told him about the student who'd tried to convince her that dinosaurs were just big chickens, which led to Ryan sharing Mia's elaborate theory about time travel and pterodactyls. They argued good-naturedly about books, discovered they both loved old movies, and spent 20 minutes debating the best diner in the city. "The Galaxy," Hannah insisted. "Open 24 hours, massive portions, and the waitress remembers your order after one visit." "The Bluebird," Ryan countered. "Better coffee, actual vegetables in the omelets, and they don't judge you for eating breakfast at midnight." "The Galaxy doesn't judge either. They encourage it." "We should test this scientifically. Try both and compare." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Is that you asking me out again?" "Only if the answer is yes." She pretended to consider it. "I suppose I could be convinced. For science." They spent another hour browsing the shelves, pulling books and reading passages aloud, arguing about authors and genres. Ryan had surprisingly strong opinions about thriller novels. and Hannah discovered they shared a love for literary fiction that didn't take itself too seriously. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the street in orange and gold. Ryan walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, that same slight awkwardness from their first meeting returning. "This was really great," he said. "I'm glad we did this." "Me too." Hannah unlocked her car but didn't get in immediately. "So, the diner experiment. When should we conduct this vital research?" "Are you free Sunday? Mia has a play date in the afternoon, so I have a few hours." "Sunday works." This time, the goodbye was easier. A brief hug, warm and uncomplicated, and then Hannah was driving home with NPR on the radio and a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Sunday morning, Ryan picked her up at 10. He'd suggested the Bluebird first, his choice, so he got to defend it. And when they walked in, Hannah had to admit it was charming. Vintage booths, checkerboard floors, and a waitress who greeted Ryan by name. "Regular, honey?" the waitress asked. "Please, Marie, and whatever she wants." Marie turned to Hannah with an appraising look. "First time here?" "First time." "He's very confident about your coffee." "He should be. Best in the city." Marie winked. "I'll give you 2 a minute with the menus." When she left, Hannah leaned across the table. "Regular. How often are you here?" "Mia and I come most Sundays. It's our routine. Breakfast, then the park if it's nice, or the library if it's not." Ryan looked slightly embarrassed. "I'm a creature of habit." "I get that. Routines are good, especially with kids." Hannah scanned the menu. "Okay, what's the move here? What should I order to get the full Bluebird experience?" "The vegetable omelet, trust me." When the food came, Hannah had to concede he might be right. The omelet was perfect, fluffy, loaded with fresh vegetables, seasoned just right. The coffee was excellent. The hash browns were crispy. "Okay," she admitted. "This is good, really good." Ryan grinned. "Told you." "But we still have to try the Galaxy, objectively." "Deal." They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Ryan told her about Mia's school, the challenges of navigating play dates and birthday parties as a single parent. Hannah shared stories about her classroom, the small victories and ongoing struggles of teaching. "Do you like it?" Ryan asked. "Teaching, I mean, not just tolerate it, but actually like it." "Most days, yeah, it's hard, dealing with parents who think their kid can do no wrong, budget cuts, standardized testing that doesn't actually measure learning. But the kids make it worth it. When you see something click, when a student who's been struggling finally gets it," Hannah smiled. "That's the good stuff." "Mia loves her teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She's strict but fair and the kids respect her." "That's the sweet spot. High expectations, high support." "Is that your philosophy?" "Trying to be. Though some days it's more like everybody stay alive until 3 o'clock and we'll call it a win." Ryan laughed, that genuine sound that made Hannah's chest warm. "I feel that. Parenting is basically organized chaos with occasional moments of terror." "But you love it." "Completely. Mia is—" He paused, searching for words. "She's everything, every good thing I've done, every choice that mattered. It's all been for her. And she's growing up so fast. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe she's the same tiny person I brought home from the hospital." The love in his voice was unmistakable, uncomplicated. Hannah thought about her own childhood, her parents' steady presence, and felt grateful Ryan was giving his daughter that same foundation. "She's lucky to have you," Hannah said. "I'm lucky to have her. She saved me, honestly. After Sarah died, I didn't know how to keep going, but Mia needed me. So I figured it out. That's what good parents do." They finished breakfast and, because neither wanted the morning to end, drove to the Galaxy. It was exactly as Hannah had promised, gloriously unpretentious, with a waitress who called everyone hun, and portions that could feed a family. "Okay, I see the appeal," Ryan admitted, surveying his pancake stack. "This is aggressively American in the best way." "Right? No pretense, just good food and coffee strong enough to strip paint." They ate until they were uncomfortably full, laughing about the absurdity of eating 2 breakfasts in one morning. When they finally left, Hannah felt lighter than she had in years. "So," Ryan said as they stood by her car, "what's the scientific conclusion? Which diner wins?" "I think we need more data. Several more trials, at minimum. That's very thorough of you. I'm an educator. I believe in rigorous research. Ryan stepped closer, and Hannah's breath caught slightly. I'm glad your sister forced you into that coffee shop. I'm glad your brother emotionally blackmailed you. Can I see you again? Not for diners or science, just because I want to? Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to maintain distance, to remember what happened last time she let someone in. But Ryan wasn't her ex. He was patient, present, genuinely kind. And she was tired of letting fear make her decisions. Yes, she said, I'd like that. This time, when he leaned in to hug her goodbye, she let herself relax into it. Let herself believe that maybe, possibly, she could have this. Yeah. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Coffee dates became dinner dates. Dinner dates became long walks through the city, bookstores and museums, quiet evenings that stretched until midnight. Ryan was careful never to push, always letting Hannah set the pace, and she found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her childhood, her parents who still lived 2 states away, her sister who called weekly to check on her, about the years building her career, the satisfaction of watching students grow, and eventually about the engagement that fell apart, the betrayal that came with it. The worst part wasn't the money, she admitted one evening as they walked through a park near her apartment. It was realizing I'd missed all the signs, that I'd been so focused on planning a future that I didn't see who I was actually with. That's not your fault, Ryan said firmly. He lied. He manipulated. That's on him, not you. I know, intellectually I know, but it still feels like failure, like I should have known better. We all should have known better about things that already happened. That's the benefit of hindsight. He took her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the past few weeks. What matters is you survived it. You rebuilt. You didn't let it destroy you. Some days it felt close. But you're still here. Still teaching. Still fighting. Still willing to have coffee with a stranger your sister set you up with. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. That takes more courage than you give yourself credit for. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder, letting herself take comfort in his solidity. What about you? You've been through worse. How did you keep going? Honestly, 1 day at a time, some days 1 hour at a time. Ryan was quiet for a moment. After Sarah died, I thought about giving up, not permanently, but just checking out. Going through the motions for Mia, but not really living. And then one day she asked me to play Tea Party, and I realized if I checked out, she'd notice. She'd grow up with a parent who was physically present but emotionally gone, and Sarah would have hated that. So you chose to be present. I chose to try. Some days I succeeded, some days I failed, but I kept trying. He stopped walking, turning to face her. That's all we can do, really. Keep trying. Keep showing up. Keep believing we deserve good things even when experience suggests otherwise. Hannah looked up at him, this man who'd lost everything and still found ways to be gentle, to be patient, to hope. I'm really glad I met you. The feeling is mutual. He kissed her then, soft and careful, and Hannah felt something inside her that had been locked tight for 2 years finally begin to ease open. A month into dating, Ryan introduced her to Mia. He'd been careful about it, explaining that he didn't bring people into his daughter's life casually, that Mia had been through enough loss and didn't need to get attached to someone who might disappear. I understand, Hannah had said, meaning it. Whenever you're ready, no pressure. But when he finally asked if she wanted to come to the park with them on Sunday, Hannah felt her nervousness spike. She'd spent years working with kids, was comfortable and confident in her classroom. But meeting Mia felt different. This mattered in a way that carried weight. Ryan must have sensed her anxiety because he sent her a text the night before. Mia is excited to meet you. She knows you're a teacher and has approximately 47 questions prepared. Fair warning. Hannah smiled at her phone and typed back, I can handle 47 questions. I've survived parent-teacher conferences. Sunday morning, Hannah met them at Riverside Park. She spotted Ryan first, standing near the playground, and then saw the small girl beside him. Mia had her father's dark hair and eyes, but there was something fierce in her expression, an intensity that suggested she missed nothing. Hi, Hannah said, approaching carefully. You must be Mia. I'm Hannah. Mia looked her up and down with the serious appraisal of someone much older. Dad says you're a teacher. I am. 3rd grade. I'm in 2nd grade. Do you like teaching? Most days. Do you like school? Sometimes. Math is boring, but reading is good. Mia tilted her head. Do you read chapter books to your class? Every day after lunch. Right now we're reading a book about a girl who solves mysteries with her dog. That sounds better than what Mrs. Patterson reads. She picks books about history, and they're super long. Ryan hid a smile. Mia, remember what we talked about, being polite? I am being polite. I didn't say they were boring, just long. Mia looked back at Hannah. Do you want to go on the swings? I can swing really high now. Want to see? Definitely. They spent the next 2 hours at the playground. Mia demonstrated her swinging abilities, tested Hannah on dinosaur knowledge. Hannah failed spectacularly and insisted on showing off her monkey bar skills. Hannah found herself relaxing, the genuine enthusiasm of a 7-year-old impossible to resist. When Mia ran off to climb the jungle gym, Ryan moved closer to Hannah. She likes you. How can you tell? She's showing off. When she doesn't like someone, she goes silent and stays close to me. He watched his daughter navigate the climbing structure with practiced ease. Thank you for this. I know it's a lot. She's great, honest, smart, doesn't waste time on nonsense. Hannah smiled. Wonder where she gets that. After the park, they went for ice cream. Mia ordered chocolate with gummy bears and sprinkles. All the toppings, they're free, and interrogated Hannah about teaching while they ate. Do your students listen to you? Usually, sometimes I have to use my teacher voice. What's your teacher voice? Hannah demonstrated, dropping her tone slightly. Mia, I need you to make good choices right now. Mia's eyes widened. That's scary. It's effective. When Ryan dropped Hannah off that evening, Mia waved enthusiastically from the back seat. Bye, Miss Hannah. See you next time. Next time. Hannah felt her throat tighten with something that might have been hope. She doesn't say that to everyone, Ryan said quietly. Just so you know. Hannah kissed him, quick and soft. I'll see you next time. The weeks turned into months, and Hannah found herself woven into the fabric of Ryan and Mia's life. Sunday mornings at the diner became a tradition for all 3 of them. She attended Mia's school play, helped with homework, learned the names of all 7 stuffed dinosaurs that shared Mia's bed. Her apartment became familiar to Ryan, her routine something he knew by heart. He learned she stress-baked on Sunday nights, that she graded papers with tea and bad reality TV, that she had strong opinions about Oxford commas and organized her bookshelf by genre, then alphabetically. It was comfortable, easy. The kind of relationship Hannah had convinced herself didn't exist. And then, 4 months in, Ryan's phone rang during dinner at her place. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, not quite alarm, but definite tension. I'm sorry, I have to take this. Of course. He stepped into her hallway, voice low, and Hannah tried not to eavesdrop. But her apartment was small, and she caught fragments. Not until Wednesday. Tell them I'll call them back. No, absolutely not. We're not moving the timeline. When he returned, his easy demeanor had cracked slightly. Sorry about that. Work thing. Everything okay? Yeah, just some people can't make decisions without calling me every 5 minutes. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. The joys of management. It was the first time Hannah had seen him stressed about work. He usually kept that part of his life separate, mentioning his job only in the vaguest terms. She'd assumed he preferred to focus on other things when they were together, which she respected. But something in his tone made her pause. Do you want to talk about it? Not really. It's just corporate nonsense. Nothing interesting. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Tell me about your week. How did the reading assessment go? They moved on, but Hannah filed the moment away. A small crack in the carefully maintained separation between Ryan's work life and everything else. She didn't push. Not then. But she would remember it later when everything came apart. The cracks appeared slowly at first, like hairline fractures in glass that only became visible when light hit them just right. 2 weeks after that tense phone call, Hannah noticed Ryan checking his phone more frequently during their dates. Not constantly, he was too considerate for that, but enough that she saw the small frown that crossed his face when certain messages came through, the way his shoulders tensed before he typed quick responses. "Everything okay?" she asked one evening as they waited for their table at a small Italian place Mia had been begging to try. Ryan looked up from his phone, and the frown smoothed into a smile. "Yeah, sorry, just some issues at the office. Nothing major." "You can talk about it, you know. I don't mind." "I know, but honestly, it's boring corporate politics. I'd rather hear about your day." He pocketed his phone deliberately. "How did the field trip go? Mia said you were chaperoning." Hannah let it go, but the deflection sat uneasily in her chest. She told him about the Natural History Museum, the chaos of managing 23 excited third graders, the student who'd tried to convince her the dinosaur skeletons were fake because bones don't last that long, Miss Miller. Ryan laughed at the right moments, engaged and present, and by the time their food arrived, Hannah had almost forgotten her concern. Almost. It wasn't until 3 days later, when Emma called during Hannah's lunch break, that the unease crystallized into something sharper. "So I was talking to Jennifer. You remember her, from college. She works in finance now, and she mentioned seeing you at some restaurant last week with Ryan Cole." Emma's tone was carefully casual, which immediately put Hannah on alert. "Small world, right?" "Yeah, we went to that Italian place. Why?" "No reason, just Jennifer seemed surprised. Said she didn't know you were dating anyone, let alone—" Emma paused. "Hannah, do you know who Ryan is?" "What do you mean?" "He's a single dad, works in corporate management. He's the CEO of Cole Industries. Has been for like 6 years. They're huge. Tech, real estate, venture capital. His brother set you guys up as a favor to me, but I had no idea he'd actually show up. Apparently he never does the blind date thing." Hannah's classroom suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. "That's not possible. Ryan would have mentioned—" "Would he? Think about it, Han. Has he ever actually told you what he does? Specifically?" The phone conversation from 2 weeks ago, the vague references to management and corporate stuff, the way he always steered conversation away from work. "He said he wanted to keep things simple," Hannah said, but her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. "That his job was boring. Running a multi-billion-dollar company is a lot of things, but boring isn't one of them." Emma's tone softened. "I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I figured he told you and you just didn't care about the money stuff, which would be very you. But if he's been hiding it—" After Emma hung up, Hannah sat at her desk, staring at the construction paper pumpkins her students had made, trying to process what she'd just learned. The lunch period bell rang, and she had to pull herself together, paste on a smile, pretend her entire understanding of her relationship hadn't just shifted on its axis. She made it through the afternoon on autopilot, teaching fractions and mediating playground disputes while her mind churned through every conversation she'd had with Ryan, re-examining them through this new lens. He'd never technically lied, but he'd carefully cultivated an impression that was fundamentally dishonest. And the worst part, the part that made her hands shake as she erased the whiteboard after dismissal, was understanding why. He thought she'd want his money, thought she'd change, become someone else if she knew. Just like her ex had thought she was useful, malleable, someone whose trust could be exploited. Hannah drove home in silence, declined Emma's follow-up call, and sat on her couch trying to decide whether to confront Ryan or simply disappear. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Mia wants to know if you can come to her soccer game Saturday. No pressure, but she's been practicing her victory dance specifically to show you." Hannah stared at the message. Sweet, genuine, exactly the kind of thing that had made her fall for him in the first place. She typed back, "We need to talk. Can you come over tonight after Mia's asleep?" The response took longer than usual. "Of course. Everything okay? Just need to talk. I'll be there by 9. The hours until 9 felt endless and too short simultaneously. Hannah changed clothes 3 times, cleaned her already clean apartment, made tea she didn't drink. When the knock finally came, she opened the door to find Ryan looking worried, his hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Are you okay?" "Come in." He stepped inside and Hannah closed the door, leaning against it for support. Ryan stood in the center of her small living room, hands in his pockets, radiating concern. Hannah, you're scaring me. What happened? Why didn't you tell me you're a CEO? The color drained from Ryan's face. For a long moment, he just stood there, and Hannah watched him cycle through responses. Denial, deflection, explanation, before finally landing on resignation. How did you find out? Does it matter? I guess not. Ryan moved to her couch but didn't sit, just gripped the back of it. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how or when. How about on our first date? When I was telling you about my ex and the debt and everything I've been through. That might have been a good time to mention you're a billionaire. If I'd told you then, you would have left. You dressed like you did specifically to make me leave. You said so yourself. If you'd known who I was, what I had, you would have assumed I wanted something from you. And instead you lied. I didn't lie. You let me believe something that wasn't true. That's the same thing, Ryan. Hannah's voice cracked and she hated it. I told you everything about the debt, about how hard I've worked to rebuild my credit, about eating ramen for 6 months straight because I couldn't afford anything else. And you just let me think we were on equal footing? We are on equal footing. Ryan's voice was urgent now, desperate. Money doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change what we have. It changes everything. Don't you see that? Hannah pushed off the door, pacing. I spent 4 months thinking you understood what it's like to struggle, to rebuild from nothing, thinking we had that in common. But you've never struggled a day in your life, have you? That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Hannah stopped pacing, facing him directly. I'm 32 years old, Ryan. I live in a 400 square foot apartment with appliances from 1987. I buy generic everything because name brand is too expensive. I tutored 3 nights a week for 2 years just to stay afloat. And you? What? You thought it was charming? Quaint? I thought you were strong. I thought you were incredible. Ryan's composure was fracturing. And I still think that. This doesn't change anything about who you are. But it changes who you are, or at least who I thought you were. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself. Every time you paid for dinner, was that you being nice or you feeling sorry for me? Every time I suggested somewhere cheap. Were you laughing at me? I would never. Hannah, please. Ryan moved toward her, but she stepped back. I know I should have told you, I know. But I've spent the last 5 years watching people change when they find out about the money. Women who suddenly laugh at all my jokes, who agree with everything I say, who look at Mia and see a meal ticket instead of a kid. I just wanted someone to see me, just me. And I wanted someone to be honest with me. Hannah's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. After what I went through, that was the one thing I needed, honesty. And you couldn't even give me that. I'm giving it to you now. Only because you got caught. The truth of it hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Ryan's expression crumbled, and for a moment he looked lost. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms reduced to someone who didn't know how to fix what he'd broken. What do you want me to say? He asked quietly. I don't know. Maybe there isn't anything to say. Hannah sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. I need time to think, to figure out if I can trust you again. Can I? Ryan stopped, started over. How much time? I don't know that either. Okay. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, everything else was real. The way I feel about you, what we built together, that wasn't about money or status or anything else. It was real. Hannah didn't respond, and after a moment, Ryan left. The silence in her apartment felt oppressive. Hannah sat on her couch until midnight, then crawled into bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Emma called the next morning before Hannah had even dragged herself to the shower. Please tell me you're okay. I'm fine. You're lying, but I'll allow it. What happened? Hannah gave her the abbreviated version, the confrontation, Ryan's explanation, the hollow feeling that had settled in her chest and showed no signs of leaving. I'm sorry, Emma said when she finished. I shouldn't have told you like that. I should have let him explain first. It's not your fault. Better to find out now than 6 months from now, or on our wedding day when I realize I don't actually know my husband. You're not being fair to him. Since when are you defending him? Since I saw you happier in the last 4 months than you've been in 4 years. Emma's voice was gentle but firm. Look, I'm not saying what he did was right. He should have told you. But I also get why he didn't. You literally dressed to scare him off on your first date. If he'd opened with, "Hi, I'm a billionaire," you would have run. That's what he said. Because it's true. Han, you've spent 2 years convinced that everyone wants something from you, building walls so high nobody could possibly get in. Ryan climbed those walls anyway, and yeah, he should have been honest about the climbing gear he was using. But he climbed them. Nobody else even tried. Hannah pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. I don't know if I can do this, Em. The money thing, it's not even about the money. It's about trust. Then tell him that. Have the actual conversation instead of shutting him out. I asked for time. I know, I'm just saying, don't use that time to build the walls higher. After they hung up, Hannah forced herself to shower and dress. She had school in an hour, 23 kids who needed her functional regardless of her personal drama. She could fall apart later. Except later never came. Between teaching and grading and parent emails, Hannah stayed busy enough that she could almost pretend nothing had changed. It was only at night, alone in her apartment, that the loneliness crept in. Ryan texted once, "I'm here if you want to talk." No pressure. Just wanted you to know. Hannah stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. Thank you. I just need a little more time. Take all the time you need. The weekend was harder. Saturdays had become synonymous with Ryan and Mia. Breakfast, errands, lazy afternoons. Without them, the hours stretched empty and accusing. Hannah threw herself into cleaning, into grading papers that didn't need grading, into anything that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Sunday morning, she baked bread, cookies, a pie nobody would eat. Her neighbors would benefit, at least. Monday brought a complication she hadn't anticipated. Mia. Hannah was monitoring recess when she spotted the small figure hovering near the fence that separated the elementary playground from the middle school field. Mia shouldn't be anywhere near Hannah's school. She attended a different elementary across town, which meant this was intentional. Hannah walked over slowly. Hey, Mia. What are you doing here? My friend's sister goes here. We had a play date. Mia's expression was solemn, too knowing for 7. But I wanted to see you. Does your dad know you're here? He's in the parking lot. He said I could say hi, but not to bother you if you're working. Hannah glanced toward the parking lot and caught a glimpse of Ryan's car. He was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, clearly giving them space. I'm not bothering you, right? Mia asked, suddenly uncertain. No, sweetheart, you're not bothering me. Hannah crouched down to Mia's level. How are you doing? Okay, Dad's been sad, though. He says he's fine, but he does the dishes weird when he's sad. Weird how? Really quiet, and he stares at them. Mia kicked at the fence post. Did you guys have a fight? Hannah's throat tightened. Sort of. Grown-up stuff. Are you going to stop being friends? I don't know yet. I hope you don't. You make Dad smile the real way, not the pretend way he does for other people. Mia looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. And you're nice. You don't talk to me like I'm stupid. You're not stupid. You're one of the smartest kids I know. Then you should know Dad didn't mean to make you sad. He messes up sometimes, but he always tries to fix it. Mia glanced back toward the parking lot. I should go. He said 5 minutes. Mia. Hannah stopped, unsure what to say. Thank you for coming to see me. You're welcome. Bye, Miss Hannah. Hannah watched her run back to the car, watched Ryan's expression shift when she climbed in. Relief and worry and hope all tangled together. He didn't look toward the playground, didn't try to catch Hannah's eye, just started the car and drove away. That night, Hannah finally called him. Hannah? Ryan's voice was rough, like he'd been sleeping or not sleeping. Is everything okay? Can we talk in person? Yes, of course. When? Now? If that works. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15. Hannah opened the door to find him in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled, looking like he'd run out the door the second they'd hung up. Come in, she said. They sat on opposite ends of her couch, the space between them feeling vast. Hannah pulled her knees to her chest, finding courage in the familiar defensive posture. I saw Mia today, she said, at my school. I know, I'm sorry. She insisted, said she needed to see you and I couldn't. Ryan stopped. I should have stopped her. That wasn't fair to you. She said you've been doing the dishes weird. A surprised laugh escaped him. She notices everything. She loves you. A lot. The feeling is mutual. Ryan's hands twisted together. Hannah, Let me talk first, she interrupted. Please. He nodded. Hannah took a breath, organizing thoughts she'd been circling for days. When I found out about my ex, about the debt, the lies, all of it, the worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing I didn't actually know him, that the person I thought I loved was just a performance, and I swore I'd never let that happen again. Ryan's expression was pained, but he stayed silent. And then I met you. This quiet, genuine guy who seemed as damaged and careful as I was, who understood what it meant to rebuild. And I thought, finally, someone real. Hannah's voice wavered. Finding out you're not who I thought you were, it brought all of that back, made me feel stupid again. You're not stupid. I know. Logically, I know. But feelings aren't logical. She looked at him directly. The thing is, I spent the last week trying to figure out if you lied to me or if I lied to myself. And I think maybe it's both. What do you mean? You weren't honest about your circumstances. That's true. But I also never asked, never pushed. I was so focused on keeping things surface level and safe that I didn't actually try to know you beyond what you volunteered. Hannah uncurled slightly. We both protected ourselves. And maybe that worked for a while, but it can't work long term. So what do we do? I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away because it's easier, safer. But the other part, she stopped, forced herself to continue. The other part knows I'm happier with you than I've been in years. That Mia makes me laugh. That Sunday morning diners and bad coffee and talking about nothing feel more right than anything else in my life. Ryan's expression shifted, hope creeping in at the edges. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either, but I need things to be different going forward. Anything. Tell me what you need. Honesty. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable or complicated. If something's bothering you, I need to know. If work is stressful, tell me. If you're worried about something, say it. Hannah met his eyes. And I'll do the same. No more protecting each other from reality. Deal. Absolutely. And I need you to understand that your money makes me uncomfortable. Not because I want it, but because of the power imbalance it creates. You can buy anything, solve any problem. I'm still paying off debt and budgeting for groceries. That gap, it matters. Ryan nodded slowly. Okay, how do we navigate that? I don't know yet, but we figure it out together, not with you making decisions for me or trying to fix things I didn't ask you to fix. I can do that. Ryan shifted slightly closer. Is it okay if I explain my side? Why I didn't tell you? Yeah. He gathered his thoughts, and Hannah saw the careful control he'd maintained for weeks finally crack open. After Sarah died, people came out of nowhere. Distant relatives I'd never met, friends who suddenly needed help, women who saw a widower with money and thought they could step in. It was relentless, and I was grieving, barely functional, trying to keep Mia alive and safe while my entire world fell apart. Hannah's anger softened slightly, though she kept it in check. I eventually learned to recognize the pattern, Ryan continued. The shift that happened when people found out about the money. The way conversations changed, the way they looked at me differently. So I started keeping it private, downplaying it. And then when I met you, he paused. You were so determined not to be impressed, so committed to staying guarded. And I thought if I told you, you'd put me in the same category as your ex, someone using resources to manipulate. I might have, Hannah admitted. Right. So I told myself I'd wait until you trusted me, until what we had was solid enough that the money wouldn't matter. But the longer I waited, the harder it got to bring up, and the worse the lie became. It wasn't a lie exactly, Hannah said, but it wasn't truth either. No, it wasn't. Ryan's voice was raw. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you enough to be honest. Should have given you the choice instead of making it for you. They sat in silence for a long moment. Hannah processed his words, weighing them against her own experience, her own fear. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Okay. We try again, but differently this time. Actually honest. The relief on Ryan's face was almost painful to witness. Thank you. I promise I'll... Don't promise perfection. Just promise effort. That's all I can offer too. Then effort. I promise effort. Hannah uncurled completely, and Ryan closed the distance between them. The hug was careful at first, tentative, and then Hannah felt herself relax into it, breathing in the familiar scent of his laundry detergent, and something underneath that was just him. I missed you, she whispered against his shoulder. I missed you too, so much. They stayed like that for a long time, neither wanting to let go, both aware of how close they'd come to losing this. When they finally pulled apart, Ryan's expression was serious. Can I tell you something else? Full honesty? Please. There's a work thing coming up, a gala. It's in 2 weeks and normally I skip them, but this year my company is being honored and I have to attend. He took her hand. I'd like you to come with me, but I want you to understand what you're signing up for. It's going to be formal, there will be press, and people are going to ask questions about who you are. Hannah's stomach dropped. That's a lot. I know, and if you're not ready, I completely understand. But I also don't want to hide you, don't want to hide us. What about Mia? Won't she be there? No, she's spending that weekend with my brother and his family. This is strictly adult territory, boring speeches and expensive wine. Hannah thought about it, about cameras and questions and the judgment of people who would see her cheap dress and clearance shoes, about stepping into a world that wasn't hers and never would be. But she also thought about Ryan's expression, the vulnerability in his request, the fact that he was asking, not assuming. Okay, she said, I'll go. Really? Really, but I'm going to need help with the dress code. I'm guessing my teacher wardrobe isn't black tie appropriate. Ryan laughed, real and warm. We'll figure it out, together. Together, Hannah agreed. And for the first time in a week, the tightness in her chest finally eased. The dress arrived 3 days before the gala, delivered to Hannah's classroom during her lunch break by a courier who looked deeply uncomfortable navigating elementary school hallways. The box was sleek black, tied with silver ribbon, and when Hannah opened it in the privacy of her storage closet, she found a gown that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Deep navy silk that shimmered like water, simple lines that wouldn't look cheap in photographs, and a handwritten note from Ryan. Saw this and thought of you. If you hate it, we'll find something else. No pressure. R. Hannah held the dress against herself, catching her reflection in the tiny mirror she kept for checking her appearance before parent meetings. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger, someone who might actually belong at a billionaire's gala instead of surrounded by construction paper and spelling tests. Her phone buzzed. Emma, because of course Emma had developed some kind of sister telepathy about dramatic moments. Please tell me you're not spiraling, Emma said when Hannah answered. I'm holding a dress that costs more than my car. First of all, your car cost $800 and sounds like it's dying every time you start it. Second, is the dress hideous? It's beautiful. That's the problem. How is that a problem? Hannah sank onto one of the tiny chairs meant for 8-year-olds, the dress pooling across her lap. Because I'm going to show up at this thing and everyone's going to know I don't belong there. They're going to look at me and see exactly what I am, a broke teacher who's dating way out of her league. First of all, you're not broke. You're financially recovering, which is different. Second, Ryan isn't out of your league. Money doesn't determine worth, and you know that. Emma's voice softened. What's really going on, hon? I'm scared. The money thing was abstract before, something we could ignore in diners and bookstores. But this, showing up at his world, meeting his people, it makes it real. And I don't know if I can handle real. You've handled worse. Have I? Because right now it feels like I'm setting myself up for the exact same humiliation all over again. Except this time it'll be public, with cameras. So don't go. Hannah blinked. What? Don't go. If it's too much, tell Ryan you're not ready. He'll understand. Emma paused. But if you do go, stop acting like you're less than him. You're a grown woman with a career you're good at, who's been through hell and came out stronger. That's worth more than any bank account. After they hung up, Hannah sat in her storage closet for another 10 minutes, surrounded by art supplies and the faint smell of tempera paint, trying to find that strength Emma insisted she had. That evening, Ryan came over with takeout and found her on the couch with the dress box beside her, unopened since she'd brought it home. "You hate it," he said, setting down the food. "I don't hate it. It's perfect. That's the problem." Ryan sat beside her, careful not to disturb the box. "Talk to me." "I'm terrified," Hannah admitted. "Of the gala, of your world, of everyone looking at me and knowing I don't fit." "You fit with me. That's all that matters." "Is it? Because you've spent 5 years in that world. You know those people, and I'm going to show up and they're going to see right through me." "See through you to what?" Ryan's voice was gentle but firm. "To the fact that you're intelligent, kind, and don't take anyone's crap? That you work harder than most of them ever have? That you chose a career helping kids instead of chasing money? They're going to see someone who's with you for your wallet. Some of them will think that no matter what. They thought it about Sarah and she came from money herself." Ryan took Hannah's hand. "I'm not asking you to impress them or perform for them. I'm asking you to stand beside me for one evening so I don't have to face it alone." Hannah looked at him, really looked, and saw past the calm exterior to the tension underneath. "You hate these things." "I despise them. The false conversations, the networking, the performance. But it's part of the job, and this year I can't skip it." He squeezed her hand. "Having you there would make it bearable. But if you're not ready, I understand." "What do I even talk to these people about?" "The truth. You're a teacher. If they ask what you do, tell them. If they ask how we met, tell them your sister set us up. You don't need to be anyone but yourself." "Myself in a dress that costs more than I make in a month." "The dress is just fabric. You make it matter, not the other way around." Ryan pulled her close. "And for the record, you could show up in jeans and still be the most interesting person in that room." Hannah let herself lean into him, drawing strength from his steadiness. "Okay, I'll go. But if I panic and hide in the bathroom all night, you have to come find me." "Deal." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation that felt both excessive and necessary. Emma insisted on coming over to help with hair and makeup, arriving with enough supplies to stock a salon. "I don't even know what half of this stuff is," Hannah protested, eyeing the array of products spread across her bathroom counter. "That's why I'm here. Sit down and trust me." "The last time you said that, I ended up with purple hair for a month." "We were 19 and it looked cool. Now sit." Hannah sat, and Emma went to work with the focused intensity of a surgeon. An hour later, Hannah barely recognized herself. Her hair was swept into something elegant and effortless looking that had probably taken real effort, her makeup subtle but polished. And when she finally put on the dress, even Emma went quiet. "Wow," Emma said finally. "Han, you look like I'm playing dress up. Like you belong in that dress. Like you were made for it." Emma's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Ryan's going to lose his mind." The doorbell rang at exactly 7, and Hannah's stomach dropped through the floor. Emma squeezed her shoulder before going to answer it, leaving Hannah staring at herself in the full-length mirror Emma had insisted on bringing over. She heard Ryan's voice in the living room, heard Emma saying something teasing, and then footsteps approaching. Hannah turned from the mirror as Ryan appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, wearing a tuxedo that made her breath catch. He stopped mid-step, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. "You're staring," Hannah said finally, nervous. "I know. I can't—" Ryan cleared his throat. "You look incredible. You clean up pretty well yourself." He crossed to her slowly, like approaching something precious he was afraid to break. "I know I said the dress didn't matter, but I was wrong. You make that dress extraordinary." Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. Smooth talker. Honest talker. He offered his arm. "Ready?" "Absolutely not. Let's go anyway." The car Ryan had sent was sleek and black, with a driver who offered a polite greeting before shutting them into the leather-scented interior. As they pulled away from Hannah's apartment building, She watched the familiar streets slide past and felt like she was leaving her real life behind. "You're nervous," Ryan observed, his hand finding hers. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me." "You do this thing where you press your lips together when you're anxious." "Great. Now I'm going to be self-conscious about my lips too." "Don't be. I like your lips." He smiled. "Hannah, if at any point tonight you want to leave, we leave. No questions, no judgment, just say the word." The venue was a historic hotel downtown, all marble columns and glittering chandeliers with a red carpet leading to the entrance where photographers were already stationed. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs as their car pulled up. "Breathe," Ryan murmured. "We'll go straight inside. The photos are optional." But as soon as they stepped out, cameras flashed. Ryan kept his hand on the small of her back, steady and grounding as they navigated the carpet. Hannah heard her name being called, reporters who'd apparently done their research, and questions being shouted about their relationship. "Mr. Cole, who's your date? How long have you been together? Miss Miller, what do you do?" Ryan ignored all of it, keeping them moving toward the entrance, but Hannah caught sight of herself on one photographer's digital display as they passed. The image showed a poised woman in a stunning dress, Ryan's hand protective at her back, both of them looking like they belonged exactly where they were. Maybe Emma had been right. Maybe the dress did matter, at least for tonight. Inside was even more overwhelming. The ballroom was massive, round tables draped in white linen surrounding a dance floor, with a stage at the far end and bars stationed at strategic intervals. The room was already half full of people who looked like they'd stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that fit like they'd been custom-made, everyone radiating wealth and confidence. "Ryan," a man in his 50s approached, hand extended. "Good to see you finally made it to one of these things." "David," Ryan shook his hand. "This is Hannah Miller. Hannah, David Chen. He runs the tech division." David turned his assessing gaze on Hannah. "Pleasure. What brings you into Ryan's orbit?" "Blind date, actually," Hannah said, finding her voice. "My sister's persistent." David laughed. "Good for her. Ryan here has turned down more setups than I can count. You must be special." "Or stubborn enough to stick around despite his best efforts at sabotage," Hannah replied, and was rewarded with genuine amusement in David's expression. They moved through the room, Ryan introducing her to various colleagues and business associates. Hannah quickly developed a script. Teacher, 3rd grade. Yes, she enjoyed it. No, she'd never considered private school. Most people were polite, some were genuinely interested, and a few looked at her like they were doing calculations in their heads about net worth and social climbing. Those looks made Hannah's spine straighten. She wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here for Ryan, and that was enough. It was when they reached their assigned table that things got complicated. Already seated were Ryan's brother Marcus with his wife, 2 couples Hannah didn't recognize, and an older woman wearing diamonds that could probably fund Hannah's school's art program for a decade. "Ryan, darling," the woman said, standing to offer her cheek for a kiss. "I was beginning to think you'd skip this year too." "Hello, Catherine." Ryan's tone was polite but cool. "This is Hannah Miller." "Hannah?" "Catherine Cole. My mother." Hannah's stomach dropped. Ryan's mother. He'd mentioned her exactly once, in passing, saying only that she lived in Connecticut and they weren't particularly close. Looking at Catherine now, perfectly coiffed silver hair, expression of polite interest masking sharp evaluation, Hannah understood why. "How lovely to meet you," Catherine said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze sharper. Ryan didn't mention he was bringing anyone. "Last-minute decision," Ryan said smoothly, pulling out Hannah's chair. As they sat, Marcus leaned over with a warm smile. "Ignore Mother, she's impossible to please. I'm Marcus, the better-looking brother, and this is my wife Jennifer." Jennifer rolled her eyes, but smiled. "Don't mind him, he's delusional. It's nice to meet you, Hannah." The dinner service began, courses appearing and disappearing with choreographed precision. Hannah focused on the safe topics, talked with Jennifer about her work in nonprofit development, listened to Marcus's stories about his kids, answered polite questions about teaching. But she felt Catherine's gaze returning to her repeatedly, assessing, judging, finding her wanting. It was halfway through the main course when Catherine finally struck. "So Hannah," she said, her voice carrying across the table conversation. How did you and Ryan really meet? The blind date story is charming, but I'm curious about the details. That is how we met, Hannah said. My sister Emma is friends with Marcus. She set us up. How enterprising of her? Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. And you're a public school teacher? Elementary, 3rd grade. How fulfilling that must be, though I imagine the salary is quite modest. Catherine took a sip of wine. I've always admired people who choose passion over practicality. The implication was clear. Hannah felt Ryan tense beside her, but she put a hand on his knee under the table, a silent request to let her handle this. The salary is modest, Hannah agreed, but I've found that actual fulfillment is worth more than a paycheck. Though I understand that's a difficult concept for some people to grasp. Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed. Tell me, dear, what attracted you to my son? I'm sure his personality is quite compelling. There it was, the accusation delivered with a smile wrapped in politeness. Hannah set down her fork carefully. What attracted me to Ryan was his honesty, his dedication to his daughter. The way he listens when people talk instead of waiting for his turn to speak. The fact that he values character over credentials. She met Catherine's gaze directly. Though, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't know who he was when we met. I showed up to that blind date in my worst clothes specifically to scare him off because I was tired of being disappointed by people. The table had gone quiet, everyone watching. How refreshing, Catherine said, though her tone suggested otherwise. And when you discovered his circumstances, you decided to stay. How convenient. Mother, Ryan started, but Hannah squeezed his knee again. Actually, when I found out, I almost left. Because I'd spent 2 years rebuilding my life after my ex-fiancé destroyed my credit, and I wasn't interested in being with someone who couldn't be honest with me. Hannah's voice was steady, calm. Ryan not telling me who he was initially? That was a problem. But the fact that he was willing to have the hard conversation, to actually work through it instead of throwing money at it, that's what made me stay. Catherine opened her mouth, but Marcus cut in. I like her. She's got spine. About time someone stood up to you, Mother. I'm simply looking out for my son's interests. My interests are my own concern, Ryan said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. And Hannah has been nothing but honest with me from the beginning, more honest than most people in this room would know how to be. Catherine's expression hardened. Ryan, I understand you're lonely. Raising Mia alone can't be easy, but bringing someone into your life, into her life, requires discernment. And I'm not convinced. With respect, Catherine, Hannah interrupted, surprised by her own boldness, your opinion on my relationship with Ryan isn't actually relevant. What's relevant is that he's happy, that Mia is happy, that we're building something real based on mutual respect and genuine affection. She paused. But since we're being direct, let me save you the investigation I'm sure you're planning. Yes, I have debt. Yes, I live in a tiny apartment. Yes, I shop at thrift stores and clip coupons. And no, I'm not with Ryan for his money. I'm with him because he makes me laugh, because he challenges me to be better, and because he's the first person in years who's made me believe I deserve good things. The silence at the table was absolute. Catherine looked like she'd been slapped. Marcus was grinning openly, and Ryan's hand found Hannah's under the table, squeezing tight. Well, Jennifer said brightly, breaking the tension, I think that deserves a toast, to honesty and good relationships. Glasses were raised, though Catherine's participation was notably reluctant. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but Hannah could feel the weight of what had just happened settling over the table. When dinner finally ended and people began moving toward the bar or the dance floor, Ryan pulled Hannah aside. I'm so sorry, he said, his expression pained. I should have warned you about her. She's protective. I get it. Hannah took a shaky breath, adrenaline finally catching up with her, though I think I just burned that bridge pretty thoroughly. You were magnificent, completely, perfectly magnificent. Ryan cupped her face gently. I know that took courage you shouldn't have had to use. Yeah, well, I'm done letting people make me feel small. Hannah managed a smile. Though I might need that drink now. Coming right up. At the bar, Hannah ordered a whiskey, straight because wine felt too delicate for how she was feeling, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd confronted Ryan's mother at a gala, in front of witnesses. Her hands were shaking slightly as she lifted the glass. That was quite a performance. Hannah turned to find a woman in her 40s, elegant in emerald green, watching her with amusement. I'm not sure performance is the right word, Hannah said carefully. Fair enough. Truth-telling, then. I'm Victoria Hastings. I run the foundation that's being honored tonight. She extended her hand. And I've been wanting Catherine Cole taken down a peg for about 15 years. Thank you for that. Hannah shook her hand, surprised. I wasn't trying to cause a scene. No, you were trying to survive one. There's a difference. Victoria sipped her own drink. Catherine specializes in making people feel inadequate. It's her superpower. The fact that you didn't crumble is impressive. I crumbled a little. But you recovered. That's what counts. Victoria studied her thoughtfully. You're a teacher? 3rd grade. My daughter's in 3rd grade. Hates it, actually. Says her teacher makes learning boring. Victoria grimaced. We're looking at other options for next year, but the private schools around here are insufferable. Too focused on test scores and college prep for 8-year-olds. Hannah found herself relaxing slightly. That's the eternal struggle, balancing actual education with the metrics people use to judge it. Do you do any private tutoring? My daughter needs someone who can make learning interesting again, help her remember why she used to love school. I do, actually, though my rate is probably not what you're used to. I don't care about the rate. I care about results. Victoria pulled out her phone. Can I get your number? I'd love to discuss this further, away from all this noise. They exchanged information, and Victoria excused herself to network, leaving Hannah slightly dazed. She'd just been confronted by Ryan's mother and potentially gained a new student in the span of 30 minutes. The evening was surreal. Ryan found her a few minutes later, concern evident. You okay? Yeah, surprisingly, yeah. Hannah finished her whiskey. Your mother hates me. My mother hates everyone who makes her question her worldview. You're in good company. He pulled her toward the dance floor as music started. Dance with me, please. I need one normal moment in all this chaos. The music was slow, classical, and Hannah let Ryan lead her onto the floor. She wasn't a great dancer, had never taken lessons, never had occasion to, but Ryan made it easy, keeping her close and moving in simple patterns. I meant what I said earlier, Hannah murmured against his shoulder, about why I'm with you, in case you were wondering. I wasn't wondering, but it's good to hear anyway. Ryan's hand tightened on her waist. I love you, Hannah. I should have said it before now, but I was afraid of scaring you off. But after tonight, after watching you stand up to my mother with more grace and strength than I've ever managed, I love you. Completely. Hannah's breath caught. She pulled back enough to see his face, found nothing but sincerity there. I love you too, even though you have terrible taste in family members. He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. I can't argue with that. They danced through 2 more songs, and for a while Hannah forgot about Catherine's judgment, about the cameras outside, about everything except the feeling of Ryan's arms around her, and the certainty that this, right here, was worth fighting for. It was only when they finally left the dance floor that reality reasserted itself. Catherine was holding court near the bar, and though Hannah couldn't hear what she was saying, the glances being thrown in their direction suggested it wasn't complimentary. Ignore her, Ryan said, following Hannah's gaze. She thrives on attention. Denying her that is the best revenge. But throughout the rest of the evening, Hannah felt the weight of those stares, those whispered conversations. She smiled through the speeches, applauded at appropriate moments, made small talk with people whose names she forgot immediately, and all the while, she felt the gulf between Ryan's world and hers widening. When they finally escaped to the car well past midnight, Hannah's face hurt from maintaining her smile, and her feet were screaming from heels she wasn't used to wearing. Thank you, Ryan said as they pulled away from the hotel, for coming tonight, for handling my mother, for everything. Your mother is a piece of work. That's putting it mildly. She's been trying to control my life since I took over the company. Thinks she knows better than I do about everything from business decisions to personal relationships. She really hates that I'm not wealthy. She hates that she can't predict or control you. Money is just the excuse. Ryan loosened his bow tie, looking exhausted. For what it's worth, everyone else loved you. Marcus has already texted me 3 times saying I'd be an idiot to let you go. Smart man, your brother. They rode in comfortable silence for a while before Ryan spoke again. I know tonight was hard. Know it probably confirmed every fear you had about my world. But I need you to know that's not my world. It's a world I have to exist in sometimes. But it's not who I am. I know, Hannah said quietly. But it's part of your life. Part of what being with you means. And I'm not sure I'm equipped for it. You handled yourself better than most people who've been navigating that world for decades. I got through one night. That doesn't mean I can do it regularly. Hannah looked out the window at the city passing by. Your mother asked what attracted me to you, and I gave her a good answer, a true answer. But I didn't tell her the whole truth. What's the whole truth? That I'm terrified. That every time I let myself get comfortable with us, something reminds me of how different our lives are. And I don't know how to bridge that gap. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. What if we don't try to bridge it? What if we just accept that we come from different places and build something new that's ours? Not my world or your world, but our world. Is that possible? I don't know, but I'd like to try. He took her hand. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. We just have to decide if we want to keep trying. Hannah looked at their intertwined hands, his familiar and steady, hers still shaking slightly from adrenaline and fear and hope. I want to keep trying. Then that's enough for now. When the car pulled up to Hannah's building, Ryan walked her to her door despite the late hour. On her front step, surrounded by the familiar smell of her neighbors cooking and the distant sound of traffic, Hannah felt herself returning to reality. Tonight was a lot, she said, searching for her keys. It was. I'm sorry it had to be. Don't be. It was necessary. I needed to see that part of your life, even if it was terrifying. She found her keys, but didn't immediately unlock the door. Ryan, when you said you loved me, did you mean it? Every word. Good. Because I meant it too. And I think that's going to have to be enough to get us through whatever comes next. He kissed her then, gentle and thorough, and Hannah let herself sink into it, let herself believe that love might actually be enough. When she finally went inside and closed the door, she leaned against it, the events of the evening washing over her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How did it go? Are you okay? Do I need to come over with ice cream and murder plans? Hannah smiled and typed back. Survived. Told his mother off. He told me he loves me. I told him I love him. Currently processing everything. The response was immediate. What? Calling you now? Hannah let it go to voicemail. She'd talk to Emma tomorrow, would process everything with her sister's help. But tonight, she just wanted to hold on to the feeling of Ryan's arms around her, his steady presence, the certainty that whatever challenges they faced, they'd face them together. She changed out of the beautiful dress carefully, hanging it in her closet where it looked absurdly out of place among her teacher clothes and thrift store finds. But she liked having it there, a reminder that she could exist in both worlds when necessary. As she finally crawled into bed, exhausted but strangely hopeful, Hannah's phone lit up with one last message from Ryan. Sleep well. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you for tonight. For everything. I love you. She fell asleep smiling, the fears and doubts still present but quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. Love, it turned out, was pretty good at drowning out doubt, at least for tonight. The morning after the gala, Hannah woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Emma demanding details, but there were also messages from numbers she didn't recognize and 3 voicemails from reporters asking for comment on her relationship with Ryan Cole. She stared at her phone in disbelief, stomach sinking as she scrolled through gossip site links Emma had forwarded. The photos from the red carpet had already made their rounds online, accompanied by speculation about who she was, where she'd come from, and what her real motives were. One headline read, Mystery Woman Crashes Coal Industries Gala. Another, Elementary Teacher Lands Billionaire. Fairy Tale or Fortune Hunter? Hannah's hands shook as she clicked through the articles, each one more invasive than the last. Someone had found her school's website, her LinkedIn profile, even her college graduation photo. The comment sections were brutal, filled with strangers dissecting her appearance, her background, her worthiness. Her phone rang. Ryan. Don't read the articles, he said immediately. Hannah, I'm so sorry. I should have prepared you for this. They found my school. Ryan, they have pictures of the building where I work. What if they show up? What if they bother my students? They won't. I'm having my team handle it. We'll issue a statement asking for privacy, and I've already contacted your principal to arrange security if needed. You contacted my principal? Hannah's voice rose. Without asking me? Ryan paused. You're right. I should have called you first. I'm sorry. I just wanted to protect you. Hannah sat on her bed, still in her pajamas, feeling the walls of her carefully rebuilt life cracking. I can't do this. Ryan, I can't have strangers analyzing my life, reporters calling me, people showing up at my workplace. I know, and I'm handling it. Just give me a few hours. To do what? Make them magically forget I exist? To make them lose interest. There's already another story breaking about a tech merger. By tomorrow, we'll be old news. But it wasn't old news by tomorrow. 3 days later, Hannah was still getting stopped by other teachers asking if she was really dating Ryan Cole, still finding her photo on social media with increasingly creative captions, still fielding questions from parents during pickup. The worst part was the change in how people looked at her. Other teachers who'd been friendly now seemed distant, like they weren't sure how to talk to someone who'd crossed into a different economic stratosphere. Parents who'd barely noticed her before now lingered during drop-off, asking invasive questions disguised as friendly interest. Even her students picked up on something. On Thursday, one of her 8-year-olds asked during quiet reading time, Miss Miller, are you going to quit teaching and be rich now? Hannah looked up from the essay she was grading, startled. What? No. Why would you think that? My mom said you're dating a billionaire. She said you probably won't want to teach anymore once you have all that money. The other students were suddenly very interested in this conversation, heads popping up from their books. Hannah set down her pen carefully. I love teaching, she said firmly, and I'm not going anywhere. Being in a relationship doesn't change who I am or what I do. It just means I have someone special in my life, like your parents have each other. But my mom said, I'm sure your mom means well, but she doesn't know everything about my life. Nobody does except me. And I'm telling you, I'm not leaving. Hannah looked around at all her students. You guys are stuck with me until June, at minimum. Possibly longer if you're unlucky. That got a few laughs, and the tension broke. But after school, Hannah sat at her desk fighting tears of frustration. This was her sanctuary, her place where she was just Miss Miller who taught fractions and read chapter books and helped kids learn to be kind. Now even that was infected with speculation and judgment. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Victoria Hastings. From the gala? I'd still love to talk about tutoring my daughter. Are you free this weekend? Hannah stared at the message. Normal, professional, treating her like an actual person instead of a tabloid curiosity. She typed back, Saturday afternoon works. Want to meet at a coffee shop to discuss? The response came quickly. Perfect. I'll send you the address. At least something good might come from the gala nightmare. That evening, Ryan came over with dinner and found Hannah stress baking. Her tiny kitchen was covered in cooling racks holding cookies, brownies, and what looked like the beginning of a pie crust. Bad day? He asked, surveying the damage. My students asked if I was quitting teaching to be rich. Parents are treating me like I'm either a gold digger or a curiosity, and I got 3 more calls from reporters today. Hannah viciously rolled out pie dough. So, yeah, bad day. Ryan set down the takeout bags and came to stand beside her. What can I do? Nothing. That's the problem. You can't fix this. I can try. I can have my lawyers send cease and desist letters to the publications, can hire security for your school, and that will make it worse. Hannah dropped the rolling pin with a clatter. Don't you see? Every time you swoop in with lawyers and security and solutions, it just proves what everyone already thinks, that I need you, that I can't handle my own life, that I'm with you because you can fix everything. That's not what I think. Maybe not, but it's what everyone else thinks. And honestly, Ryan, sometimes I wonder if they're right. Hannah's voice cracked. Because look at us. You're trying to protect me with resources I could never access on my own. You're solving problems I can't solve. How is that a partnership? How is that equal? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. What do you want me to do? I don't know. I just, I need to handle some things myself. Need to prove I can survive this without you throwing money at it. Okay. Then tell me what you need from me. Not what I can fix, but what you actually need. Hannah looked at him, this man who was trying so hard but couldn't quite understand the fundamental imbalance between them. I need you to trust that I can handle my own problems. I need you to ask before you make decisions that affect my life. And I need you to understand that sometimes the right thing to do is nothing. I can do that. I'll do better. Ryan reached for her hand. But you have to tell me when I'm overstepping. I can't read your mind. Fair enough. They ate dinner mostly in silence, the unspoken tension filling Hannah's small apartment. When Ryan left around 9, the goodbye felt strained, and Hannah found herself wondering how many more of these conversations they could survive before something broke permanently. Saturday's meeting with Victoria was a welcome distraction. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked away in a neighborhood that catered to locals rather than tourists, and Victoria arrived exactly on time with a bright-eyed girl who looked nothing like Hannah had expected. "This is Sophie," Victoria said. "Sophie, this is Miss Miller. She's the teacher I told you about." Sophie regarded Hannah with serious brown eyes. "Do you make learning boring?" "I try not to, but sometimes the subjects are naturally boring and we just have to get through them." Hannah smiled. "What do you find boring about school?" "Everything. We just do worksheets all day. Mrs. Patterson says we have to practice for tests. That does sound boring. What do you like to learn about when you're not at school?" "Space, and bugs, and how things work." Hannah and Victoria spent the next hour discussing Sophie's struggles, her strengths, and what Victoria hoped to accomplish with tutoring. By the end, they had agreed on twice-weekly sessions focused on making learning engaging again, rather than just drilling test skills. "Thank you," Victoria said as they gathered their things. "Sophie needs someone who remembers education is supposed to be interesting." "I appreciate the opportunity and the trust." Victoria paused, then said quietly, "For what it's worth, I think you handled the gala perfectly. Catherine Cole is a bully, and bullies only understand strength. You showed strength." "I'm not sure strength is the right word. Desperation, maybe." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Victoria smiled. "I'll see you Tuesday for our first session?" After they left, Hannah sat for a while longer, feeling something settle in her chest. This was what she needed. Work that was hers. Accomplishments that had nothing to do with who she was dating. Proof that she existed independent of Ryan's world. Her phone rang. Emma, finally catching her at a moment she could talk. "Okay, I've given you almost a week to process," Emma said without preamble. "But I need details, all of them. Starting with the part where you told Ryan's mother off and ending with the I love yous." Hannah laughed despite herself. "It's a long story." "I have time. Derek's watching the kids. Talk." So Hannah did, pouring out everything from the gala to the media storm to her fight with Ryan about independence and fixing problems. Emma listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough that Hannah knew her sister was genuinely concerned. "Okay," Emma said when Hannah finally ran out of words. "First, I'm proud of you for standing up to Catherine. Second, the media thing sucks, but it'll blow over. Third, and most important, do you actually want to be with Ryan, or are you just trying to prove you can handle his world? I want to be with him. I love him. But I don't know if love is enough when our lives are this different. He can't help trying to fix things. It's who he is. And I can't help feeling suffocated by it because I spent 2 years learning to fix my own problems." Hannah sighed. "We're both doing our best, and it still feels impossible." "Nothing worth having is easy, hon. You know that." "Yeah, but there's difficult, and then there's fundamentally incompatible." "Which do you think this is?" Hannah didn't have an answer. The following Tuesday, she started tutoring Sophie and found genuine joy in watching the girl's face light up when they turned math problems into space calculations and reading comprehension into researching actual insects. This was what she was good at. This was where she belonged. Ryan noticed the change in her mood, the way she seemed lighter after tutoring sessions. "Sophie's lucky to have you," he said one evening as they cooked dinner together at his place while Mia did homework at the kitchen table. "I'm lucky to have the work. It reminds me who I am outside of all the noise. You've always known who you are. That's one of the things I love about you. Have I? Because lately I feel like I'm losing myself in trying to fit into your world while maintaining my own. Hannah lowered her voice, mindful of Mia's presence. I don't know how to be both people. The teacher who clips coupons and the woman who attends galas. You don't have to be both. You can just be you. But your life requires both, and I'm not sure I can sustain that. Mia looked up from her homework. Are you guys fighting? No, sweetheart, Ryan said quickly. Just talking about grown-up stuff. You look like you're fighting. You have the same faces Dad and I make when we disagree about bedtime. Hannah couldn't help but smile. We're not fighting. We're just trying to figure some things out. Oh, okay. Mia went back to her math problems, apparently satisfied. But later, after Mia was in bed and Hannah was gathering her things to leave, Ryan stopped her at the door. Are we okay? He asked quietly. Because it feels like we're not okay. I don't know. I want us to be okay. But I'm struggling with this, Ryan. With the attention, with the money, with feeling like I'm always trying to catch up to where you are. You're not catching up. We're just in different places. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. Doesn't it, though? You can solve problems I can't even afford to have. You live in a world I can visit but never truly belong to. How do we build a future on that foundation? The same way we built what we have now. One day at a time, being honest with each other, choosing to stay even when it's hard. Hannah wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that love and commitment were enough to bridge the gap between their realities. But doubt had taken root, fed by every awkward interaction, every judgment from strangers, every reminder that she and Ryan came from fundamentally different worlds. I need some time, she said finally. Not a break, just space to think, to figure out if I can actually do this long term. Ryan's face fell, but he nodded. How much time? I don't know, a week, maybe 2? Okay, but Hannah, he caught her hand. I love you. That hasn't changed. Whatever you need to figure out, I'll wait. What if what I figure out is that this can't work? Then at least we'll know. At least we'll have tried. He pulled her close, and Hannah let herself lean into him one more time. But I'm hoping you'll figure out something different. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of Hannah's life. She threw herself into teaching, into tutoring Sophie, into anything that kept her busy and distracted. Emma checked in daily, offering support without pushing. Ryan texted occasionally, nothing heavy, just small updates about Mia or funny things that happened at work, and Hannah appreciated the space he was giving her. But Mia was another story. 10 days into Hannah's self-imposed thinking period, she was leaving her school building when she spotted a familiar small figure sitting on the front steps. Mia? What are you doing here? Hannah looked around for Ryan's car but didn't see it. Dad's picking me up in 15 minutes. We had a thing nearby and I asked if I could see you. Mia stood up, her expression unusually serious. Are you going to break up with my dad? Hannah's heart clenched. Mia, because if you are, I need to know. I like you a lot, Miss Hannah. You're nice and you don't treat me like I'm stupid. But I don't want to like you if you're going to leave. Hannah sat down on the steps, and after a moment, Mia sat beside her. I'm not trying to hurt you or your dad. I'm just trying to figure out if I can be what you both need. What do you mean? Your dad's life is very different from mine. He has money and important jobs and people who expect things from him. And I'm just a teacher who lives in a small apartment and worries about paying bills. Sometimes I'm not sure those two things fit together. Mia was quiet for a moment. Dad says love is about choosing someone every day. That it's work, but it's good work. He's right. It is work. So why aren't you choosing him? The simple question cut through all of Hannah's complicated reasoning. Why wasn't she choosing him? Because she was scared. Because it was easier to run than to risk being hurt. Because admitting she needed him felt like admitting weakness. That's a really good question, Hannah said softly. I don't want you to go, Mia said, her voice small. I know that's selfish, but I really don't want you to go. Hannah put her arm around Mia's shoulders. You're not selfish, and I don't want to go either. I'm just scared. Of what? Of not being good enough. of your dad's money changing how people see me, of losing myself trying to be someone I'm not. But Dad likes who you are. He says you're the most real person he knows. He said that? Yeah. Last week when I asked why he looked sad, he said you were taking time to think about things, but that he understood because you're honest and real, and that's rare. Mia looked up at her. So if he likes who you are, why do you have to be someone different? Out of the mouths of babes, Hannah thought, 7 years old and cutting straight to the truth. You're very smart, Hannah said. I know. Dad says I get it from my mom. Mia paused. I don't remember her much, but Dad says she would have liked you, that you're strong like she was. Hannah's eyes burned with sudden tears. That's a really beautiful thing to say. It's true. Dad doesn't lie about important stuff. They sat together until Ryan's car pulled up. He got out looking worried, probably expecting Mia had ambushed Hannah against his wishes, but when he saw them sitting peacefully together, his expression shifted to something softer. Ready to go, kiddo? He called. Mia stood up, then turned back to Hannah. You should choose him, just so you know. That's my opinion. I'll take it under advisement, Hannah said, smiling through threatening tears. After they left, Hannah sat on the steps for another 20 minutes, watching the sun set and thinking about 7-year-old wisdom. When she finally pulled out her phone, she typed a message to Ryan before she could overthink it. Can we talk? Tonight if you're free. The response came within seconds. I'll get a sitter, 7, okay? Perfect. Hannah spent the intervening hours both preparing and refusing to prepare. She knew what she needed to say, but knowing and doing were different things. By the time Ryan knocked on her door at 7 sharp, her heart was racing. He looked tired, she noticed, like he hadn't been sleeping well. The guilt of that hit her squarely in the chest. Hi, she said, stepping back to let him in. Hi. He stood in her living room, hands in his pockets, carefully not presuming anything. You wanted to talk? Yeah. Sit down? They sat on opposite ends of her couch, the space between them feeling both vast and easily crossed. Hannah pulled her knees to her chest, finding courage in the familiar defensive posture. I talked to Mia today, she started. She ambushed me at school. I'm sorry. I told her not to. Don't be sorry. She said some things I needed to hear. Hannah took a breath. She asked why I wasn't choosing you, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. Just a lot of fear dressed up as practical concerns. Ryan didn't respond, just waited for her to continue. The truth is, your money scares me. Not because I want it, but because of the power imbalance it creates. You can solve any problem I have with a checkbook, and that makes me feel small and powerless and dependent in ways that remind me of my ex. Hannah forced herself to keep going. But I've been thinking about it wrong. Your money isn't the problem. My fear of needing help is the problem. Hannah, let me finish, please. She waited for his nod. I've spent 2 years proving I don't need anyone, that I can handle everything myself, and I have handled it. But handling everything alone isn't the same as being strong. Sometimes strength is accepting help. Sometimes it's trusting someone enough to be vulnerable. What are you saying? I'm saying I've been punishing you for having resources because I was afraid of needing them. Afraid that if I let you help me, I'd stop being able to help myself. But that's not how it works, is it? You helping me doesn't erase everything I've accomplished. It doesn't make me weak or dependent. It just means I have someone in my corner. Ryan moved closer, hope evident in his expression. So what does that mean for us? It means I'm choosing you every day, even when it's scary, even when your mother hates me and the press speculates about my motives and I feel out of place at galas. Hannah reached for his hand. Because Mia was right. You like who I am, and I like who you are, and maybe that's enough to build on. It's more than enough. Ryan's voice was rough with emotion. But I need you to know I'm not asking you to change, not asking you to be comfortable with my money or the attention or any of it, just asking you to let me walk beside you while you figure it out. What if I never figure it out? What if I'm always uncomfortable with that part of your life? Then we work around it. I keep going to the events I have to attend. You come when you want to. We find balance. That simple? It can be, if we let it. Ryan cupped her face gently. I love you, Hannah Miller. I love that you work 3 jobs to pay off debt that isn't yours. I love that you stress bake and organize your bookshelf by genre. I love that you stood up to my mother and that you make Mia laugh and that you're stubborn enough to need space when things get hard. I don't want you to change any of that. I love you too. Even though you have terrible instincts about fixing things, and your family is complicated, and you make me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. Hannah smiled through tears. Even though being with you is the scariest thing I've ever done. Scarier than teaching 3rd grade? Way scarier. At least 3rd graders eventually listen. Ryan laughed and pulled her close, and Hannah let herself sink into the embrace, let herself believe that maybe they really could make this work. That love and honesty and choosing each other every day might actually be enough. So we're doing this? Ryan asked against her hair. Actually trying? We're doing this. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll tell me when I'm being stubborn about accepting help, and I'll tell you when you're being overbearing about providing it. We keep being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Deal. Absolutely deal. They stayed wrapped together on Hannah's couch for a long time, neither wanting to move, both grateful for the chance to try again. Eventually, Ryan's phone buzzed with a text from his sitter, and reality reasserted itself. I should go, he said reluctantly. Mia's going to want a full report on this conversation. Tell her she was very helpful and very sneaky. She gets that from her mother. Ryan stood, pulling Hannah up with him. Tomorrow's Saturday. Want to come to the diner with us? Resume our normal routine? I'd like that. I've missed the terrible coffee. At the door, Ryan kissed her thoroughly, and Hannah kissed him back with all the certainty she'd found in the last 2 weeks of doubt. I'm glad you chose me, he said softly. I'm glad you waited. After he left, Hannah sat in the quiet of her apartment, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She'd faced her fears, had the hard conversation, and come out the other side intact. Maybe even stronger. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Dad smiling the real way again. Thank you. Hannah smiled at the screen and typed back, Thank you for helping me see clearly. You're very wise. I know. See you tomorrow for pancakes. Tomorrow for pancakes, Hannah thought, and the day after for whatever came next. One day at a time, choosing love over fear, building something real and lasting. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be more fights, more moments of doubt, more reminders of the gap between their worlds. But they'd face those things together, with honesty and patience and the kind of love that chose to stay even when leaving was easier. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of golden autumn light that made everything feel possible. Hannah dressed in her usual jeans and sweater, no performance, no pretense, and met Ryan and Mia at the Bluebird Diner like they'd done dozens of times before. But something felt different now. Lighter. Like a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying had finally lifted. Mia bounced in her seat as Hannah slid into the booth. Dad said you're not going away. That's right. I'm sticking around if that's okay with you. It's very okay. I already told my friends at school you're my dad's girlfriend, and they said that's cool. Ryan smiled over his coffee. Apparently it's past the 2nd grade approval process. That's binding. I wouldn't dream of violating that, Hannah said, reaching for the menu she'd memorized months ago. They ordered their usual, pancakes for Mia, the vegetable omelet for Ryan, French toast for Hannah, and fell into comfortable conversation about Mia's upcoming science fair project and whether dinosaurs would have made good pets. They'd eat too much, Mia declared, and you couldn't take them for walks. They'd probably step on you. Valid concerns, Hannah agreed. What about smaller dinosaurs, like the chicken-sized ones? Maybe, but they might still bite. Watching them together, the easy affection and genuine interest Ryan showed in his daughter's rambling thoughts, Hannah felt something settle deep in her chest. This was what she'd been so afraid of losing. Not the galas or the money, but these quiet moments that made up the foundation of real life. After breakfast, they walked through the park near the diner, Mia running ahead to climb on the playground equipment while Ryan and Hannah followed at a slower pace, hands linked. She was worried, Ryan said quietly. The last 2 weeks. She didn't say much, but I could tell. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt her. You didn't, You needed space, and that's fair. But it made me realize how much she's attached to you, how much we both are. He squeezed her hand. I don't ever want to take that for granted. You won't. And I won't take you for granted either. That's the deal. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Hannah continued teaching and tutoring Sophie, who was blossoming under the individualized attention. Ryan managed his company while being more open about the challenges and pressures that came with it. They had dinner together most nights, sometimes at his place with Mia, sometimes at hers in quiet privacy, sometimes at cheap diners or food trucks because Hannah insisted they maintain some connection to her world too. The media attention gradually faded as Ryan had predicted, replaced by newer scandals and more interesting stories. Occasionally, someone would recognize Hannah at the grocery store or stopping for coffee, but the invasive curiosity died down to manageable levels. It was 3 months after their reconciliation when the next major test arrived. Hannah was grading papers on a Sunday afternoon when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize but a local area code. She almost ignored it, probably another spam call, but something made her answer. Hannah Miller? Speaking. This is Robert Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding your account with us. Hannah's stomach dropped. She'd been so careful with her payments, had never missed a deadline in 2 years. Is there a problem? No problem at all. Actually, I'm calling to inform you that your outstanding balance has been paid in full. The payment was processed yesterday, and you should see it reflected in your account within 24 hours. The world tilted sideways. That's not possible. I didn't make a payment. There must be some mistake. No mistake, ma'am. A payment was made via wire transfer for the full remaining balance of $47,312. You should have received a confirmation email. Hannah's hands started shaking. Who made the payment? I'm not at liberty to disclose that information, but the payment was legitimate and your account is now settled. Congratulations, Miss Miller. After she hung up, Hannah sat frozen on her couch, paper sliding unnoticed from her lap to the floor. $47,000. The exact amount she'd been chipping away at for 2 years, the weight that had pressed down on every decision, every purchase, every moment of freedom. Gone. Just like that. And she knew exactly who'd done it. She called Ryan immediately, her fury building with every ring. Hey, he answered, sounding pleased. I was just thinking about you. Want to grab dinner? Did you pay off my debt? Silence. Ryan, did you pay off my debt without asking me? Hannah, let me explain. That's a yes. Oh my God. She stood up, pacing her small living room. How could you? How could you do that after everything we talked about? After I explicitly told you I needed to handle my own problems. I know, but I found out about the investigation. What investigation? Ryan took a breath. I hired someone to look into your ex to see if there was any way to prove fraud, to get you out from under that debt legally, and they found evidence. Credit card applications with forged signatures, accounts opened in your name from IP addresses that traced to his work computer. Enough to build a case. Hannah stopped pacing. What? I have documentation. Enough that a lawyer thinks we could not only get the charges dismissed, but potentially go after him for restitution. But that would take time, months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, you'd still be making payments on debt that isn't yours. His voice was earnest, pleading. So I paid it off, just to stop the bleeding while we pursue the legal case. You can pay me back once we get the settlement, if that's what you want. Or not. I don't care about the money, Hannah. I care about you not spending another day under that burden. You should have asked me. I know. You should have told me about the investigation. Let me make the decision about what to do with the information. You're right. I should have. He paused. I saw a way to help you, and I took it, and I know that's not what you wanted. I know I overstepped. But I can't bring myself to regret giving you that freedom. Hannah sank back onto her couch, anger warring with relief, warring with frustration. I needed to finish paying it off myself. I needed to prove I could handle it. You already proved that. 2 years of sacrifice and discipline and never giving up. You proved it every single day. The last 6 months of payments don't change what you've already accomplished. That's not your decision to make. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. But Hannah, you've been drowning for 2 years, and I had a life preserver. What was I supposed to do? Just watch you struggle when I could help? You were supposed to trust me to make my own choices about my own life. Even when those choices hurt you? Even when there's a better option? Especially then. Because they're my choices to make, my consequences to live with. Hannah pressed her free hand against her eyes, fighting tears. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You swooping in and fixing everything because you can. Me becoming dependent on your resources instead of my own strength. That's not what this is. You're not dependent on me. You never could be. You're too stubborn and capable. This is just me loving you enough to shoulder some of your burden when I have the means to do it. Without asking. Without asking, he admitted quietly. Which was wrong. I know it was wrong. But I don't know how to watch you carry weight I could lift. I don't know how to have the power to help and choose not to use it. Hannah sat in silence, processing. He was right that she'd been drowning, right that the debt had colored every aspect of her life for 2 years, limiting her choices and stealing her peace. And he was right that she'd already proven herself, to him, to Emma, to herself. But he'd also fundamentally disrespected her autonomy, had made a massive decision about her life without her input, and that couldn't just be brushed aside because his intentions were good. I need time, she said finally. Again, I need time to figure out how I feel about this. Okay? Ryan sounded defeated. How much time? I don't know. But Ryan, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep making unilateral decisions about my life and expecting me to be grateful. That's not partnership. That's not equality. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. I think you genuinely believe that having the power to help means you should help, regardless of what the other person wants. And that's fundamentally incompatible with what I need in a relationship. Then tell me what you need, please. Because I'm trying, Hannah, but I keep getting it wrong. I need you to ask before you act, every time. Even when you think you know what I'd want, even when waiting feels impossible. I need to be consulted about decisions that affect my life. That's the baseline. I can do that. I will do that. Can you, though? Can you really watch me struggle when you have the ability to fix it? Can you sit with the discomfort of having resources and not using them? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. But I want to try. For you, for us. I want to try. Wanting isn't enough. You have to actually do it. I know. After they hung up, Hannah sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, trying to untangle her feelings. Part of her was furious at Ryan for overstepping, at herself for getting into this situation in the first place. Part of her was relieved beyond measure that the debt was gone, that she could finally breathe without that weight pressing down. And part of her was terrified that this was just the beginning, that there would always be something Ryan could fix, some problem he could solve, some burden he could lift, and that accepting his help would slowly erode her independence until she didn't recognize herself anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Heard from Ryan, you okay? Hannah stared at the message. Of course Ryan had called Emma, probably looking for insight into how badly he'd messed up. She called her sister back. How much did he tell you? Enough. That he paid off your debt without asking, and you're understandably pissed. Understandably? Hon, I love you, but you're being kind of stubborn about this. He went behind my back to free you from debt that was crushing you. Yes, he should have asked. Absolutely. But he also gave you something you've been killing yourself to achieve. Maybe don't throw that back in his face. Hannah felt tears threaten. I wanted to finish it myself. Why? What does finishing it yourself prove that you haven't already proven? Emma's voice softened. You spent 2 years paying off debt that wasn't yours. You rebuilt your credit, your savings, your entire life from scratch. You're one of the strongest people I know. Accepting help from someone who loves you doesn't erase any of that. It feels like it does. That's your pride talking, not reality. And I get it. After what your ex did, you needed to prove you could stand alone. But Han, you don't have to stand alone anymore. You have people who want to help, who can help. Letting them doesn't make you weak. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. You've been so focused on not needing anyone that you've forgotten it's okay to want support. It's okay to accept help. It's okay to let someone who loves you make your life easier when they can. Hannah wiped at her eyes. What if I lose myself in accepting his help? What if I become someone who just relies on him for everything? That's not who you are. You couldn't become that person if you tried. You're fundamentally incapable of being dependent on anyone. You're too self-sufficient, too stubborn, too proud. Emma paused. But you're also capable of being part of a team, of sharing burdens. You just have to let yourself. After they hung up, Hannah sat with that truth. Emma was right. She'd been so determined to prove her independence that she'd turned it into isolation, had convinced herself that needing anyone was weakness instead of recognizing that healthy relationships involved mutual support. The question was whether she could change that, whether she could accept Ryan's help without losing herself in the process. She spent 3 days thinking about it, going through the motions at school while her mind churned. On the 4th day, she finally called Ryan and asked him to come over. He arrived looking worn, like he hadn't been sleeping well. "Thank you for seeing me. We need to talk. Actually talk, not just fight and apologize and move on." "Okay." Ryan sat on her couch, maintaining careful distance. "I'm listening." Hannah took a breath, organizing her thoughts. "I've been thinking about what you said, about having the power to help and not knowing how to not use it. And I think that's the core issue. We have fundamentally different relationships with money and power." "What do you mean?" "You see money as a tool, something useful but not defining. I see it as a measure of independence and self-sufficiency. You think solving problems is an expression of love. I think accepting solutions is surrendering control." Hannah looked at him directly. "Those aren't compatible worldviews, and I don't know how to bridge that gap. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need rules, clear boundaries about when you can help and when you need to let me struggle, and you have to actually follow them, even when it's hard." Ryan nodded slowly. "Tell me what the rules are." "First, you ask before you spend money on me or solve a problem I'm working on. Every time, no exceptions. Even if you think you know what I'd want." "Okay. What else?" "Second, if I say no to help, you respect that. You don't go around me or find creative ways to help anyway. You trust that I have reasons for declining." "That's fair." "Third, we keep our finances separate. I don't want access to your accounts and you don't get access to mine. We split costs on things we do together, proportional to our incomes if necessary, but we maintain separate financial lives." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "What about the debt? The money I already spent?" "I'll pay you back. It might take me a while, but I'll pay you back." "Hannah, that's my boundary. Either I pay you back or we can't move forward. I need to know I'm capable of resolving my own debts, even if I do it with your loan instead of the bank's." He studied her face, then nodded. "Okay, set up a payment plan, whatever works for you. No interest, no timeline. Just whenever you can." "Thank you." Hannah felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "And the last rule. If you break these boundaries, we're done. Not a fight, not a cooling off period. Done. Because I can't build a life with someone who doesn't respect my autonomy, no matter how good his intentions are." The weight of that ultimatum hung between them. Ryan looked pained, but resolute. "I understand, and I agree to your terms. All of them." "Can you actually follow them? Be honest." "I think so. It'll be hard, going against every instinct I have about protecting the people I love, but I care about you more than I care about being comfortable. So yeah, I can follow them." Hannah searched his face for doubt or reservation, but found only determination. "Okay, then we try again, with these new rules in place." "Just like that?" "Not just like that. We've both changed in the last few months. I've learned that accepting help isn't the same as being helpless. You've learned that having power doesn't mean you should always use it. Maybe that's enough growth to build on." Ryan crossed the distance between them, pulling her into a careful embrace. "I love you, and I'm sorry I made you feel like your choices didn't matter. They do. You do. I love you too, even though you're impossible and overbearing and think you can fix everything. I'm working on it." "Good. Because I'm working on letting you help when it's actually helpful instead of treating every offer like an attack on my independence." They stayed wrapped together for a long time, both aware of how close they'd come to losing this. Again, But they'd survived it. Again. And maybe that resilience was its own kind of strength. The months that followed were easier and harder simultaneously. Ryan genuinely tried to follow Hannah's boundaries, checking before he acted, accepting her refusals without argument. But there were slip-ups, a donation to her school in her name that she made him retract, a surprise upgrade on a flight they were taking together that led to a tense conversation about the difference between treats and overstepping. But they worked through it, talked about the missteps, adjusted their approach, kept choosing each other even when it would have been easier to walk away. Hannah paid Ryan back for the debt in installments, not because he asked, but because she needed to prove to herself she could. It took 8 months, during which she maintained her tutoring sessions with Sophie and 2 other students Victoria had referred, building a small side business that was entirely hers. Mia continued to be the best part of both their lives, growing taller and smarter and more opinionated by the day. She'd fully accepted Hannah as part of her family, which sometimes meant asking Hannah to take her side in arguments with her father, and sometimes meant brutal honesty about Hannah's cooking skills. "No offense, Miss Hannah," Mia said one evening as they attempted to make dinner together, "but Dad's spaghetti is way better than yours." "None taken. Your dad has skills I lack. You're really good at other stuff, though, like helping with homework and finding the best library books. I'll take that trade." It was a year after the gala, almost to the day, when Ryan asked Hannah to move in with him. They were sitting on her couch, still her couch, in her apartment, though she spent at least half her nights at his place, when he brought it up. "I've been thinking," he started, which immediately put Hannah on alert because that phrase rarely led anywhere simple. "Your lease is up next month." "It is. I'm planning to renew." "What if you didn't?" Hannah set down her book. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you move in with us. You and me and Mia, actually living together instead of splitting time between 2 places." Ryan turned to face her fully. "I know it's a big step. I know you value your independence and your space, but we've been together for over a year and I can't imagine my life without you in it, permanently." "Ryan, before you answer, let me say this. It wouldn't be me taking care of you or supporting you. We'd be actual partners, sharing a life. You'd pay rent if you want to, or we could work out some other arrangement. Your choice. And you'd have your own space. There's a room you could use as an office or just a place to be alone when you need it." Hannah's heart was racing. "That's a really big step." "I know, and if you're not ready, I understand, but I want you to know the offer is there, that I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night and build an actual life together instead of coordinating schedules." She thought about her apartment, small, worn, hers. Thought about what giving it up would mean, the last vestige of her independent life, the proof that she could stand alone. And then she thought about Sunday morning pancakes with Mia, about falling asleep next to Ryan every night, about being part of a family instead of visiting one. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." But Hannah didn't need much time. 2 days later, she called Ryan from her classroom during lunch. "I have conditions." "I'm listening." "I pay rent. Market rate for what a room in that neighborhood would cost. Non-negotiable." "Okay? And I get final say on decorating my office space. You don't get to hire some designer to make it perfect." "Deal." "And we tell Mia together, as a team, because this affects her too and she deserves to be part of the conversation." "Absolutely." Ryan's voice was warm with barely contained excitement. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes, I'm moving in. Hannah Miller, you just made my whole year. Don't get too excited. You're going to realize I'm messy and take too long in the bathroom and hog the good reading chair." "I already know all that from sleepovers. I'm prepared." They told Mia that evening, sitting her down and explaining that Hannah would be living with them full-time if Mia was okay with that. Mia looked between them seriously. "Does this mean Miss Hannah will be here for breakfast every day?" "Every day," Hannah confirmed. "And help with homework?" "When you need it." "And tell Dad when he's being annoying?" Ryan laughed. "Yes, that too." "Okay then, she can move in." Mia paused. "Can I help decorate her office?" "That's up to Hannah." Hannah smiled. "I could use a design consultant." "What's your rate?" "Free, but you have to read me extra chapters at bedtime." "Deal." The move happened gradually over 3 weeks. Hannah packed up her tiny apartment, sorted through possessions accumulated over years of careful budgeting, and slowly integrated her life into Ryan's house. It was strange at first, having so much space, seeing her books on shelves in a home office that was bigger than her entire former living room. But it was also right. Mia loved having Hannah there consistently. Ryan seemed more settled, like a piece he hadn't known was missing had finally clicked into place. And Hannah found herself relaxing into domesticity in ways she hadn't expected. She still worked, still maintained her tutoring business, still had her own money and her own career. But she came home to a family, to people who loved her and needed her and chose her every single day. 4 months after moving in, on a quiet Saturday morning, Ryan found Hannah in her office grading papers and asked if she wanted to go for a walk. Mia was at a sleepover, and the house was unusually quiet. They walked to the park where they'd had so many previous conversations, where Hannah had watched Mia play while falling in love with both of them without quite realizing it. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet, and Hannah felt contentment settle over her like a favorite blanket. "I want to ask you something," Ryan said, stopping near the bench where they'd sat during some of their hardest conversations. "And I want you to know you can say no, that there's no pressure and we don't have to change anything if you're not ready." Hannah's heart started pounding. "Okay." Ryan took both her hands, looking nervous in a way she rarely saw. "I've been thinking about our future, about what I want and what you want, and how to build something that works for both of us." "Ryan, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I don't want a big wedding with my mother's guest list and photographers and performance. I don't want you to feel like you're being absorbed into my life. I want us to build our life, together, as equals." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to marry you, not for show, not for some social obligation, just because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. And I want it to be official." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple ring, elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful without being overwhelming. "This isn't about money or status or any of that. It's about me choosing you and you choosing me and making that choice permanent." Hannah stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. "You're proposing." "I'm proposing. Very badly, apparently, because you look terrified." "I'm not terrified, I'm—" She laughed through tears. "I'm surprised and overwhelmed and really, really happy." "Happy enough to say yes?" Hannah thought about everything they'd been through, the lies and reconciliations, the fights about money and independence, the slow building of trust. Thought about Mia's face when she'd asked if Hannah was leaving, about Sunday pancakes and terrible diner coffee and coming home to people who loved her. "Yes," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "We do this our way. Small wedding, just people who matter. No performance, no press, no anything we don't actually want." "Deal." "Absolutely deal." Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, which she'd question him about later, and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah was laughing and crying simultaneously. "Mia's going to lose her mind. She helped pick the ring. She's been conspiring with me for weeks. That sneaky kid. Wonder where she gets it." They sat on the bench, Hannah's head on Ryan's shoulder, both looking at the ring catching afternoon light. It felt surreal and perfectly right simultaneously. "What happens now?" Hannah asked. "Whatever we want. We plan a wedding or we don't. We tell people or we keep it private for a while. We figure it out together." "Together," Hannah repeated. "I like the sound of that." They told Mia that evening when she got home from her sleepover. She screamed, jumped up and down, and immediately started planning the wedding with the confidence of someone who'd clearly given this significant thought. "You should get married in the park," Mia declared, "with just family and close friends. And I can be the flower girl, but I want to wear my dinosaur sneakers, not fancy shoes." "Noted," Hannah said, grinning, "and the cake should be chocolate because vanilla is boring." "Also noted." They did get married in the park 6 months later on a spring morning with fewer than 30 people in attendance. Hannah wore a simple dress that she'd found on sale. Mia wore her dinosaur sneakers, and Ryan cried when Hannah walked toward him with Emma as her only attendant. Catherine Cole didn't attend, which was fine with everyone involved. Marcus stood as Ryan's best man, and gave a toast about stubborn people finding each other. Emma cried through her entire speech about watching her sister learn to trust again. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Hannah kissed her husband and thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first coffee shop meeting to this moment, every fight and reconciliation, every fear overcome and boundary set, they'd built something real, something that honored both of them, that didn't require either to sacrifice who they were. A partnership based on honesty and respect and choosing each other every single day. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about money sometimes, still had to negotiate the gap between their backgrounds. Ryan still occasionally overstepped, and Hannah still occasionally withdrew. But they'd learned how to navigate those rough patches, how to talk through the hard stuff instead of running from it. 2 years after the wedding, Hannah got a promotion to lead teacher at her school, overseeing curriculum development. She loved the work, loved that her career was thriving independent of her husband's resources. Ryan continued running his company but scaled back his hours, prioritizing time with family over constant availability. Mia grew into a confident, opinionated preteen who still loved dinosaurs and had recently discovered a passion for coding. She called Hannah Mom now, a shift that had happened gradually and naturally, and Hannah's heart still swelled every time she heard it. They still went to the Bluebird for pancakes most Sundays, still argued about which diner had better coffee. Still read books together and took walks and built the kind of quiet, steady life that didn't make headlines but filled all the spaces that mattered. One evening, as they sat on their back porch watching Mia practice skateboarding in the driveway, Ryan took Hannah's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life?" "Never. Not once." Hannah squeezed his hand. "You? Are you kidding? Marrying you was the smartest thing I've ever done. Well, that and hiring the investigator who got evidence against your ex." Hannah rolled her eyes. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Nope. I did one good thing without asking, and I'm dining out on it forever. One good thing and about 40 overstepping things. But I'm getting better." "You are," Hannah admitted. "We both are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter perfect her kickflip, surrounded by the life they'd built together. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and honest and entirely theirs. Hannah thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, walking into that coffee shop dressed to repel connection, convinced she was better off alone. That woman had been strong but incomplete, capable but closed off, surviving but not truly living. She'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, that love didn't require sacrificing yourself, that you could be independent and part of a partnership simultaneously, that the right person didn't complete you but complemented you, making you more yourself instead of less. Ryan had learned too, that fixing problems wasn't the same as showing love, that respecting boundaries mattered more than good intentions. That true partnership meant walking beside someone, not clearing their path. Together, they'd learned that love was choice. Every morning, every argument, every moment of doubt, choosing to stay, choosing to work through it, choosing each other over and over until it became as natural as breathing. "Hey," Mia called from the driveway, "watch this." She executed a perfect trick, landing solidly and throwing her arms up in triumph. Hannah and Ryan applauded, and Mia beamed with pride before skating off to try something even more ambitious. "She's fearless," Ryan observed. "She gets that from you." "Pretty sure she gets it from both of us." Hannah smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Yeah, I think you're right." They stayed there as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, wrapped in the quiet certainty of a love that had been tested and proven, challenged and strengthened, built deliberately and carefully into something that would last. Not because it was easy, not because it was perfect, but because it was real and honest and worth every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt, every choice to stay when leaving would have been simpler. This was what happened when two damaged people chose to heal together instead of alone. When they built something new instead of trying to fit into each other's existing lives. When they respected each other enough to maintain their identities while creating something shared. This was partnership, this was family, this was home, and it was more than enough.